Greetings, members one and all of the Salivation Nation. After a lot of thought and contemplation on this issue, considering how many different types and styles there are of silver out there, for many of us in this community who are stackers and collectors, in fact, I would argue that a lot of us probably fall somewhere in between those two worlds. But there's a vast array and of a variety out there from which we can accumulate silver. So in this video, I have thought of 5 broad major categories of silver, and we're going to explore those together. The very first category is probably the most obvious choice and probably the most popular choice for many of us out there. This category is government-issued coins and metals. Now again, keep in mind these are very broad categories, and even in that category there are a lot of subtypes of government-issued coins and metals out there. Notice I didn't say bullion because much of what you can find from government issued is collector type coins, such as what you see here with this reverse proof American Silver Eagle here. This would be considered a collector piece for sure. By no means is that a coin to stack. It has a very high premium, at least it did at the time of issue, and there are also other pieces out there that would be considered highly collectible government issues. And this is a case where you have a government-issued piece that is a metal. Here's another example of another government-issued metal. Both of those will probably be considered collector pieces. Very fascinating and beautiful finishes on these particular pieces. And then another example would be a very high premium government-issued coin, such as the case here with the 2014 Zeus coin here from the Perth Mint, from the nation of Tuvalu. Plenty of different categories there, and that's your collector issues. And then you have what are considered, probably would be considered better bullion or relatively limited mintage collector pieces that fall in between those categories, limited issue pieces that you can accumulate and stack, and they tend to hold higher premiums, but not such a high premium that it would be considered a purely collectible piece. That would also be the cases for many of the Perth Mint products that you see, the Kookaburra and the Koala and Lunar series, and other mints around the world that have relatively limited mintage pieces, what's known as better government bullion. The other is going to be your regular bullion, and that is going to be things like the Canadian Maple Leaf, the American Silver Eagle here. All of these considered to be high mintage government-issued bullion out there. So this is the Austrian Philharmonic, and then you have the Chinese Panda, and you have the kangaroo here. So all of these would be considered, and there's others that would arguably may or may not consider to be coins per se, but the Libertad is another example, as well as the older Onza. A lot of these pieces, sometimes they start out as being bullion pieces and can end up being relatively collectible depending on the years. You know, there can be some rarities in those types and styles of that older government-issued bullion. Next, we have privately issued struck rounds and bars. And that is a separate category that is typically low premium silver. Sometimes you have pieces that have somewhat of a limited mintage, and such as what you see here, or you have other pieces as such. But most of the that's going to fall in that category are going to be just your regular multi-stamped thousands of these pieces struck and issued, such as the generic Buffalo rounds and fractionals and the like of these particular pieces, or specific to mints or bullion dealers will issue their own proprietary low premium, what's known as generic silver. And those come in the form of rounds, but they also can come in the form of bars, such as you see here. And they come in various different weights and styles. You can even get older ones that are known as art bars. And some of these older pieces can be quite collectible. It's a narrow market, but you can find a lot of these things typically for relatively low premiums for a lot of these generic, what are known as generic silver pieces. And again, you can get them in different styles, shapes, thicknesses, and the like. Some of the makers sometimes will charge a bit more of a premium for these types of pieces. The premiums definitely vary with the privately issued pieces. And then sometimes you find other privately issued pieces that are very specialized and have somewhat of a premium to them. But in cases like this, you're never ever expected or can never make a bet that you'll regain that premium on such pieces that you see that are struck out there. There's never a promise when you buy anything, really, that you're going to recapture any premiums you pay above spot price. And that's the one thing for people out there collecting to think you're guaranteed to regain your numismatic, what's known as that numismatic value, even for pieces like this, that were highly sought after at the time. As time goes on, people forget about these types of pieces. And when they forget about them, typically there's less of a demand, and the premiums tend to be stripped away or go down greatly. And there's been many times where pieces have been accumulated and acquired, and through time they've lost even their issue price. You don't even get your issue price because the premium is any amount above the spot price of silver. But the struck generic pieces can be, some of the older pieces, again, can be quite collectible. For those out there that are into the classic style and the vintage silver out there, there's so many different ways to accumulate and collect and stack. And sometimes you can find some great deals on those privately issued struck rounds and bars. Now that category, and also would include, things that are machined, such as this, would probably fall in that same category. This is a machined product here, which tend to have lower premiums at the issue price. And that's where we separate from the next category, and that is the poured and cast products. That's right, the poured and cast products, such as you see here. And this is a Johnson Matthey JMC 4-ounce bar from Canada. Johnson Matthey Canada poured silver bar there. Some of these can be very collectible as well. This is a self-poured piece that was done. And a lot of private individuals are pouring their own silver now. But then you also have companies that have formed that produce it. Well, the thing about poured silver is it's really never really mass produced, but produced in greater quantities by hand. And then you see some particular pieces that have certain themes to them, and others that celebrate or commemorate different entities and things, such as this Silver Wolverine, which is a YouTube channel from MK Bars. And so these things, typically poured silver bars, take a lot more time and material to produce, so they tend to have a higher premium out of the starting gate in the formation of these particular pieces indeed. But there's so many different varieties and shapes and styles just to poured silver. And then you go into casting. And there's sand casting, there's lost wax, and then you can have pieces produced such as this particular piece here. Very nice. This is from a company that produces these, and this is a 925 silver. This is quite a beautiful, well done piece, but again, it does take time and energy and material to produce these, and so they do command quite a much higher premium for pieces like this. But we're seeing more and more of this stuff in the marketplace, and people are collecting all different sizes and shapes from both major companies that produce them as well as private individuals. Some in this community produce very finely detailed pieces. But it's very fascinating, and in all of these categories, even going back to the government-issued pieces, coins themselves and metals can come in all various different shapes and different reliefs. You know, you can have a coin shaped like a guitar, or shaped like a globe, a sphere, or curved. There's many different ways these mints are doing them as struck pieces. So it's quite fascinating. And same thing for the privately issued pieces. They don't have to just be rounds and bars. They can be all kinds of shapes. But the fact that they're struck means that typically the premium tends to be lower, but the premiums can be just as spread and vast as the shapes themselves. And the mintage is also makes a difference as well as far as how those things are done. But poured and cast products, very interesting. The next category is what I like to refer to as spending silver. And spending silver can come in various different categories. But mainly what it is what here in the United States we refer to as 90%, or some people refer to as junk silver, which is a term I don't like. But essentially, this is silver that was once used as currency. And it can be from any nation, and it can contain really any amount of silver. There's a 35%, or I think this is 50% silver for this crown here. And so there's a vast array of different ways to accumulate silver in that regard, as what's known as what I refer to as spending silver as the broad term. Now, another way spending silver can be accumulated is the highly collectible, rare type issues, or very pristine or in great condition type of pieces, such as you see with that Morgan dollar and Winged Liberty dime here. You can find these pieces. These typically command a much higher premium, especially if they are graded. And I don't have any graded coins here, but you can find. And then here's sort of the in-between where you have a relatively nice piece here, but a common date and a common condition, so you can find it at a relatively lower premium there. So spending silver is quite a category that you can accumulate, and many times for some of these pieces you can get them for a relatively low cost over spot price. Finally, the last category is silverware and jewelry. I don't have an example of jewelry here, but I do have an example of a 925 silver chalice here, and that's another way that silver can be accumulated. Yes, indeed, and it's probably not quite as popular in this community as it is in other places, but there's ways to accumulate in that regard as well, in the form of jewelry and silverware. So those are your 5 major categories for silver for stackers and collectors. I hope you found this video useful. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude, y'all, for watching, and encourage you to please rate, comment, and subscribe.